and residents in the city. They had been shutting off water for years, but nowhere on this scale.
Welcome, welcome. We are back again, beloved community, with yet another installment of the People's Water Board Coalition's Water Wednesday webcast. As always, I am here with my dearly beloved co-host, Valerie King.
Hi, everyone.
And we cannot forget our behind-the-scenes tech guru extraordinaire, Miss Angelica, who keeps us smoothly running consistently week after week, bringing relevant content to our community. And today, people, we have a guest who is really got some prevalent information for our communities, a community warrior. She is the communications manager for Voters Not Politicians, Miss Melinda Billingsley, and she's here to talk about some issues that are coming up that we need to keep on our radar.
Thanks for coming and hanging out with us today, Melinda.
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be able to talk to y'all about this.
Yeah, I mean, when voter rights are under attack and really, this petition going around, we're actually talking about a petition that people need to be weary of. They need to really think about not signing it at all. And so we wanted to give some, talk to folks about it. And so they were informed before they signed anything that would literally take their voting rights away. And so since it's a short show, we're going to jump right in, Melinda. And so the first question we want to know about, so tell us about the Americans for Citizen Voting petition for the second proof of citizenship. Give us the nuts and bolts of it, and what all's in it?
Yes. All right. So basically, the short version is this petition is being pushed by a national special interest group. And what it will do is make it harder to register to vote. And the reason why is because these groups are trying to pick and choose who is able to participate in our elections and in our democracy. And here at Voters Not Politicians, we strongly believe that voters should choose their politicians, not the other way around. So we very much are against any policy that makes it harder for voters to be able to participate and hold their politicians accountable, hold their elected officials accountable, and have a voice in their democracy. So that's the big picture. When we look at the details of this petition and what it actually does, so this petition that is currently being pushed by Americans for Citizen Voting, there's also another petition being pushed by the Committee to Protect Voters' Rights that is being sponsored by a state politician, but they all basically do the same thing where they require what is called documentary proof of citizenship. That is a very long title that equates to a certified birth certificate, passport, and actually, let me correct myself, a birth certificate that matches your current legal name.
Which
and or a passport to prove your citizenship, yes. Or a combination of these documents to be able to provide proof of citizenship that must be presented in person at your local clerk's office in order to be able to vote. Now,
there's so much wrong with that, right? Like trans people, right? Trans people that would not, they would not be able to vote. Women who are married would not be able to vote. Anybody who has had their name changed for whatever reason would not be able to vote. Like, this is huge.
This is big. It would affect so many people.
It literally, I was thinking about everything that you were saying, Melinda, and you do that. But also think about cases where women have been in a domestically abusive relationship, and for whatever purposes they've had their name and information changed.
It becomes a life or death situation.
You're forcing them to utilize a name that could help their abuser track them down.
Absolutely. And like I said, this affects everyone. And this is not just, this is only if we want to catch new people. Right? This is every single voter. Every voter in Michigan would have to show up in person with this documentation to prove their citizenship. Now, The real issue here is that this is very clearly, it creates problems, right? We just outlined just a few of the groups that this creates problems for.
Right.
And it's not solving any problems. It's just making new ones. We have really strong voter ID laws in Michigan. Only citizens are allowed to vote in Michigan. That is already the law. So what this petition is doing is just creating new barriers to voting for Michigan citizens for no reason, for no purpose. There's no benefit to this.
It's
It just
literally
makes it
punishing
harder for people to vote.
Yeah, it's punishing people if you think about it. Just so many communities are going to be, and we're going to get into that in a minute, like who's seriously impacted by this. But also, just when you take away people's right to vote, you end up with like what we had here in Michigan in November 2000. And Nicole remembers this. We were all in the streets because this, they had just this newly enacted law, emergency manager law, right? And that had been put into place, and the Michigan voters came out in droves and said, no way, hell no, we don't want that. We want our elected officials that we voted for to be able to speak for us. And the governor and the Michigan Senate or the Michigan legislators pushed it through anyway. And the exact same legislation that the voters had voted out, they pushed it through anyway. We all, know that resulted in the Flint water crisis, right? Nicole, the Detroit water crisis in so many ways because we immediately got an authority put over our water department because of that, but our rights had been taken away. And you could go down the line like so many things, right? There's so many reasons.
But when an emergency manager was put in place, it directly resulted in the Detroit water crisis because his ideology was let's shut off as many people as possible that were behind, or we don't care what their reasoning behind why they couldn't afford their water bill was.
Kevin
Because
Orr, he was our
they had to
emergency
make the
manager.
water department a viable asset in the city's bankrupt.
Right. Right. I mean, he took away, and in our water department, mind you, is the largest asset that we have, right? And it was built by Detroiters. So, but when you're like, and you're also taking away like the importance of passing polluter pay laws, right? Making sure that there's transparency in water utilities and in DTE all the utilities, right? Making sure that everyone has access to vote really is important for our quality of life, right? These are the ways that we make those decisions.
Even when you look at the Detroit Charter that we were trying to get, the Detroit City Bill of Rights that we were trying to get passed, which included, certain rules that would be set up for water, for voting, for public transit. That was shot down. That's why it's so important for people to have the right to vote because, as you remember, we were held up by the courts until the 28th hour to say, oh, now you can go out and talk to voters about this. So the voters were not knowledgeable about what the Detroit City Charter was going to do and how.
Well, they were actually lied to, right? And Melinda, that's happening with this petition too, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I met a lady just 2 days ago in front of Aldi that was pushing this petition, and she was pretty much lying about it, about what it was for. She was lying and Aldi is a busy grocery store, right? Like, aren't they lying, Melinda?
Yeah. So what we're seeing, and Voters Not Politicians has set up a system with our volunteers, with our partners to spot circulators and report what we're hearing in the field. And we've gotten a lot of evidence. We've gotten videos from folks where it's very clear circulators have been trained to mislead voters about this petition. I myself was in front of Kroger. My dad and I were picking up lunch and I saw someone circulating and I told my dad, like, stop the car. I need to go talk to this person. I need to figure out what they're doing and I need to know why. And when I talked to this circulator who was a paid circulator, he expressed to me, like he told me, this is to make sure that people are able to get a free ID. And I said, that does not match what I am reading in this summary. If you read, every petition is legally required to have a 100-word summary at the top. And I said, I am reading this. This very clearly says it is going to require a birth certificate or a passport in order to register to vote. That is what this says. And the circulator kept saying to me, no, it's to make sure people can get a free version of that so that they are able to vote. But right now, I don't require those documents. I can go with my state ID, with my driver's license, and I can go vote. This is going to mean I have to get new documents. Well, no, they'll make sure you get those documents. This is going to get me a free passport. That doesn't even sound logical.
No. And passports are expensive.
And passports are expensive.
Going to get your birth certificate if you don't have it is very expensive.
It's expensive and it's not easy. So, for example, I live in Wayne County, but outside of the city of Detroit. But my brother was born in a Detroit hospital. Just the interplay of the different governments that we have to go through, and that's all within one county. Imagine if you were born outside of the state of Michigan. If you were an older person you could have lived here for the last 50 years, and if you have to track down a birth certificate from Tennessee or something, that's where my family is from. That's where my grandmother was born. How is she going to get that document? I don't know. It's expensive. It is a lot of time that would need to be taken. And what's really important is that, as you mentioned, Valerie Jean, what these folks are saying as they're circulating is not accurate, and it's not the most honest representation of the policy. And it's also very telling that they are not leading with an honest representation of the policy. They don't want people to know what they're actually doing. They are hiding it. The other thing that we're hearing from circulators is often, other volunteers, other folks will have conversations and say, do you realize this will make it hard to vote? And those circulators simply say, not an I don't care, but they really express that their priority is getting signatures because it is a job, right?
Yeah,
they are being paid for this. This is how they're feeding their families, paying their bills. And obviously people need to pay their bills.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, if we pay our bills today, but we lose our voting rights tomorrow, what are we left?
That's right.
And the thing is it's very strategic on the part of the organizations that are paying the circulators, because I know when they do that, there's some, they're counting on most people just say, oh, sure, I'll sign the petition, and listening to what the circulator tells them the petition is about.
Yeah.
And
it's almost like they've been instructed to do those things, to say those things. And that's where, the maliciousness and really the cruelty, comes in, right? If
Absolutely.
It's just, that they've been, and we do want people to have jobs. Right now, those are few and far between for people, but yeah, like you said, if you take away voting rights, what do we have left? So what?
I was also thinking about how they're telling people, oh, you can get a passport, you can get this, you can get that. This is also a very strategic and covert way of tracking who's documented, who's undocumented, who's, registered as a citizen, and what backlash that could have, like sending ICE to this person's address.
Yeah. Well, and we see this happening all over the country where, we're in very frightening times. And when our vote is under attack, it's even worse. It's, we can't get people in that are going to be the voice of the people. We can't do that. So what is the impact of the petition? What's the impact of two communities for this petition? And let's talk about who's going to be seriously impacted. We've already talked a little bit about it, but, in what ways? Who's going to be seriously impacted, and how is this going to affect everyone?
Yeah, so this is it's a really big question because a lot of folks don't realize just how many people would be negatively impacted by this policy. There are a few folks that automatically stand out. Obviously, I mentioned how, if you need your birth certificate, it's going to have to match your current legal name, or you're going to have to provide extra documents. That is obviously going to affect people who have changed their name, including a lot of married women. You have trans folks who have changed their name. You have that's a big category of folks right there. That's millions of people right off the bat. The easiest way, of course, proof citizenship is if you have a U.S. passport. Only about 35% of Michiganders, of Michigan voters, have a passport. So that's a huge, again, millions of people who don't have access to that. So they would be affected because they're going to have to provide either additional documentation or different documentation. You have all of the folks who, like I mentioned, this requires everyone to go in person to present these documents. in person to their clerk's office. If you do not have access to transportation, or if you live far away from your local clerk's office, think of our rural voters who might be an hour or more's drive away from their clerk's office. Think of folks who your clerk is a part-time position. They often don't, work a 9 to 5 every single day in rural townships because that's not what their job is made for, So how am I going to, find the time to go to my clerk's office? My clerk works out of their home part-time, usually only for part of the year. How am I going to, if I have to drive somewhere, for folks in the city of Detroit, maybe like their clerk's office is on the boulevard. If I don't live near there, which a lot of us wouldn't, because that's, more like downtown than where we are in our neighborhoods, how am I getting there? Do I have access to a car?
So you're
if
really
I am
talking
a
about people
senior,
living in poverty or that are going to be overall affected, right? People without transportation, houseless people, anybody who can't afford those documents. This is people who are living in extreme poverty or just poverty, period, struggling from day to day, paycheck to paycheck, are going to be, and that's most Michiganders.
most
Yeah,
Michiganders, people who
yeah,
have to work.
yeah. I was hearing you say that, you're talking about trans people whose names change, men and women, people who are in areas where they may have to travel a great distance to get their documentation. And I was thinking about that because, like, most of my children, they're all 18 and up now, were not born in the state of Michigan.
And
So
they
if
went through Hurricane Katrina. So even finding their stuff,
that's the thing,
Nicole's whole family went through Hurricane Katrina, even finding their birth certificate and their social security cards and all of that is a big deal, right?
I was thinking about people who are not originally from the United States at all.
Yeah, I mean that's a
Naturalized
serious
citizens
situation,
and
but they're trying
adoptees,
very
yes.
hard to keep those people from trying to vote, right? And look,
Absolutely.
we already have a huge voter turnout issue, right? Throughout Michigan, we have because there's no faith in the system. Already there's a huge voter turnout issue because the system people already don't trust it. They don't trust the voting system. They don't trust the politicians. They don't trust that they're a lot of people are like, my vote doesn't matter. I still can't afford my freaking water and I still can't get back and forth from work, right? There's already a huge issue with that. And then you're going to tack on lying to people, get them to vote for this and sign a petition for this, right? And that you take their rights further away. I mean, you're going to have a handful of people show up to vote. This is a huge deterrent for an already stressed
A
voter system.
handful of
Huge
people,
deterrent.
not just a handful of people, but the people they want
Yeah.
to pass a certain legislation.
Yeah. This is racist. It's hateful to people living in poverty. This is the gamut of bad, right, Melinda?
Yeah. And, it's what's interesting is that you see in other states where this policy, these documentary proof of citizenship policies have been enacted, you've seen the result and you see the folks who are most impacted. Another big category of people are students who end up not being able to vote. But you also have even the most educated and experienced voters ending up locked out of the system.
That's right.
In New Hampshire, we heard about voters in a smaller election. It was like an off year it was in like February or something. And that's the time of year where only the most educated and engaged voters are turning out. And even these voters who are engaged, they are informed, they know what's happening, they were being turned away because they no longer had the right documentation to prove their citizenship, even if they were been voters for years. And there was a story, I remember the woman's quote directly. She said, I had, my birth certificate, my mail, proof of residence, everything but the kitchen sink and my blood type. And I was not able to vote. She was turned away multiple times to try to get new documents and more documents because she had previously been married. She had legally changed her name. She kept her name changed after her divorce because it matched her children. I know a lot of older women who have been married and maybe have gotten divorced, same thing. They would not change their name because it matches their children's name. But that meant that her birth certificate and her legal ID did not match. She ended up being able to vote because she was able to provide a passport, but it was actually an expired passport. And multiple calls had to be made to the clerk's office, multiple trips to home and back. It took hours of this woman's life. It took a lot of work, and she is of the most informed and engaged kind of voter. So imagine how that's going
I
to
mean, thank
affect.
goodness for her dedication, right?
Yes.
But also bump the patriarchy this is another way that you're taking away women's rights too.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and
Yeah,
it's frightening because just think about, like, what if she goes to the clerk's office to try to get her information straight to vote, and there's 150 other people waiting. There's a
she's
chance
gonna
that
go
even if
home.
you get everything in order, it may be too late to vote. Like, everything seems very strategic to be a deterrent against people voting.
The whole communities, all of us, this affects all of us. And it's really, I mean, my next question is how can people get involved? But right now we have to be talking very vigilantly to our neighbors, our friends, our family, our community where we live,
Yeah, there's
everybody, screaming this from the mountaintops that this is not good for anybody. This will affect all of us.
we have to be just as strategic as they are being, just as deliberate with our goals to keep things democratic as they are to destroy our democracy.
That's
I
right.
mean, with that being said, how can people get involved, Melinda?
Yeah, absolutely. So one thing that we can do is, as we just said, the biggest thing is to spread the word. That is
Yeah.
what's most important. People need to
Share
know
this
that
Water Wednesday.
these petitions are out there, and you need to be very aware of it because the circulators will mislead you. They have been trained to mislead. So we really need folks to focus on, our whole messaging has been anything that you hear that mentions voter ID or citizen voting is a trick, because we know that's the messaging that they're using. And it is a trick, it is a trap. You need to read that summary very carefully so that you understand how that petition would actually affect you and your community. So that's first part. And then of course you need to tell everyone you know to be aware and to be paying attention to these things. Read those petitions very carefully. The other part that you can do if you want to get more involved, if you are feeling, if you recognize how this could affect your community and you really want to do more to be proactive, Voters Not Politicians is doing currently bi-weekly and monthly trainings to inform you on how to just teach you more about this policy, and then the actual steps you can take to take action. That includes being able to disrupt circulation. That includes being able to educate community as a community presenter, sort of like a community educator kind of thing. Writing letters to the editor, being able to publish yourself in local newspapers, local community newsletters, things like that. That's a great way to reach out to your neighbors. All of that information you can find at votersnotpoliticians.com. Actually, maybe a different one. It's vnp.vote/DTS. It's always easier to get a shorter
We're
link.
gonna put that information in the description box down below so people can just click on it and get the
Yes.
information that they need. Well, that'll be all connected to the show.
Yep, so once you click on that link, you'll find all the information about the petitions as well as a form so you can sign up to be a decline to sign volunteer with Voters Not Politicians. And then you can take those active steps to really stand up for your community.
That's right.
And stand in the way of the folks trying to suppress our vote, take away our right to vote.
Even hear that.
Yeah, this is, you can play this Water Wednesday at your community meeting. You can share it with your family. There's a lot of ways for folks to do this and do it digitally. But also, it's always a good idea to throw together a potluck with your community and your family and be like, hey, I heard about this and this is what we need to do to combat it, right? It's really important and it'll affect all of us. And it'll certainly, for our viewers that tune in to learn about water and water rights every week, this will definitely affect water in multiple ways. We name them, transparency in your utility bills. There's all of these things, polluter pay laws, but also the People's Water Board Coalition is pushing to get legislation passed this year to make sure that that every Michigander has access to affordable water, safe, affordable water. And the only way we can do that is if we have the right to vote. right? If we can go out and vote for people who already know that water is a human right. So this is, really, really important for everything. And I would say, water legislation and protecting water and all of those things, that's a life or death situation for communities. So that's how important this is. When you can't access your vote, that's life or death situation. So we really want to make sure that people know that. Do you have any final thoughts, Melinda? What else do folks need to know?
I would just sum up by reminding everyone that your right to vote is foundational for your right to participate and engage in your government and in your democracy. That is, at the end of the day, the most effective way you have to hold politicians accountable for the policy that you want to see enacted in your community. So, no matter what else you are thinking about policy wise, no matter what the biggest priority is, all of that stems from voting rights. And that is why it is so important that you never, ever, ever, for any reason, never sacrifice your right to vote. So just always remember to be informed, be engaged, and read petitions before you sign them. You do not want to get tricked because there are people who are willing to take away your right to vote. You cannot let them have that opportunity.
Agreed. That's the rule for anything. Please read things before you sign it. You could be signing your life and your very rights.
That's right. Well, thank you, Melinda, for dedicating your work to this cause. And we really appreciate Voters Not Politicians as an org. They do so much great work. Y'all do so much great work.
Yeah.
And, Nicole, thank you for always going on this journey with us. And, to our viewers, these are hard times. We have to talk to each other. We have to share things with each other. We need to figure out mutual aid and all these other things with each other. And we can only do that if we come together. And this is a great way for us to come together, a great reason for us to come together. Try to take care of each other and try to stay afloat. Bye.
All right.